Welcome to the Laguna Podcast, an attempt at illustrating the lives and stories from the Texas outdoors. Today I sit down with a man who, through simply offering help and advice in his field, was able to find himself working alongside two of the biggest companies in the industry, Yeti and Howler Brothers. This is my conversation with Rick Wittenbraker. And basically, I would like to kind of start with what you do in the industry, and then we'll start with the regular stuff.
Yeah, my name is Rick Wittenbraker.
Oh, sorry.
I work for Howler Brothers. I've been here now almost 11 years. I used to oversee marketing for a long time, and now I've handed that off to Paul Graham, who's a great human and doing a great job. And now I oversee or handle a lot of our partnerships, collaborations, a lot of outside relationships, things like that. And we have a lot of those. We do a lot of those. And then, a variety of other special projects from time to time. Like I said, I've been here almost 11 years. And prior to that, I spent 4 years, four and change at Yeti, kind of back in the early days of Yeti.
Cool. All right. Well, if we start this normal way, then if you can kind of remember your first memory in the outdoors and kind of run me chronologically through your career as an outdoorsman.
Oh, wow. My first memory is probably just fishing stock tanks, for bass with my dad. Nothing fancy, nothing like you would see in the magazines back then or on TV. It was just, stock tanks on a ranch, and just, you could walk the whole perimeter just fishing. Mm-hmm. And there were several of them. So if this one the bite wasn't on here, we'd just walk over to the next one and do that. And it was just fun. And we used to do it all the time. And so that was probably, and I mean, I still love doing that, but that was like the earliest, memory. And it's almost like now that feels almost like a muscle memory where just you want to go back, or you see a tank when you're driving down the highway, and I'm like, oh, I need to pull over there. Yeah. But yeah. And I think probably like a lot of people, just grew up with the good fortune of being able to fish a lot. And as I got a little older, got into hunting, and that really started with, for me, with dove hunting. And then it got into other stuff and deer and ducks and all that things. And I was pretty obsessed with it when I was in junior high and high school. And my friends and I would go all the time to try and go, before school and hop ducks, or go whatever we could get away with, basically. And then, I grew up in Dallas. And so it was sort of whatever we had access to there. And then we got on a deer lease in South Texas outside of Uvalde. And so for a lot of years, it was kind of a really neat father-son lease that a friend had put together. And so built a lot of friendships there, and got to do that for a number of years. And so I'd say that probably broadened my horizons a little bit. And then, everywhere we went, which I feel like growing up wasn't all that many places, but it was like we always tried to find something outdoors to do, even a new location, new destination. And so that was always a fun thing. And, just like so many people, you end up, it's kind of cumulative in a lot of ways. I think like time in the outdoors is. And so, you're always acquiring new hobbies, new things to spend money on, but also like new ways of doing things, new species to go after, so I feel like it's always cumulative in that way, and it's fun to always be adding to that. But here we are now. I just turned 50, and I still love going to stock tanks, but I love doing things like catching tarpon or going to Mexico and trying to find whatever we can down there. I mean, it's kind of always top of mind.
Mm-hmm. When was the point where you kind of started realizing that you were spending, or at least taking your time in the outdoors more seriously? You kind of like glossed over moving into hunting and stuff, but This episode is made possible by our friends over at Gordy & Sons Outfitters, located in Houston, Texas, and employing a team of experienced outdoorsmen specializing in fly fishing, hunting, and wing shooting. Gordy & Sons is sure to prepare you for success in the outdoors. Next time you find yourself prepping for a weekend getaway or a bucket list trip, be sure to give them a shout. I think that a lot of people tend to find that there'll be like a moment where they're like, okay, this is something that I actually want to pursue, or this is something that I can't just shake the bug type deal.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, I was like just consumed with it. And, probably about 5th grade on, but you're still limited because you don't have a car and you don't have all this stuff and you still have to go to school. But, I was just bugging my dad all the time to take me or to let's go do this or, and I think for me that grew and that was always there, but it was always kind of on the personal free time hobby side of things. And I frankly never even, and I've always been really like, whenever I find a new hobby or interest, I get really into it and I want to understand who all the players are, like who the companies are that are in this space or, and you really can dig in. And back in those days, it was mostly magazines, some in TV as well. But, so I would just be buying these magazines and just consuming as much as I could. And then, you get older and you get access to more stuff and you get, now you can drive and you can you have the ability to take yourself there. And so that opened up a lot too, but high school, you also get busy doing other stuff, and so, that wasn't, that was, while the access and capability was maybe greater, the time allocation was maybe less, but it was always there. And then, but after, I'd say, I didn't start working in the outdoor industry until much later. And it really was kind of an accident. I had spent 4 years at a few jobs and locations down the career path, but I was back here in Austin. Had spent 4 years at a startup medical device company, and that company had kind of hit a crossroads. And so I'm trying to figure out what I want to do next. And I really didn't know. And I along with some friends who I'm still friends with today, and some of them actually work with, and but they had reached out and said, hey, we're going to put on this event called the Fly Fishing Film Tour. And back then was this brand new thing. It was not coming to Austin, but you could buy a license and then just put on the event yourself. And so they said, look, we want to do this. It was Tosh Brown, who's a pretty renowned photographer, outdoor photographer, and Ted Mendrick, who's the manager at Sportsman's Finest, has been there for a long time.
Yeah.
Yep, great human. Banning Collins, who has been in the industry a long time, is one of our sales reps and has been for 12 years or something here at Howler and other brands. And then Christine Johnson Warren. And Christine is actually my god sister. Our parents are best friends and all that good stuff. And so they had already sort of clustered together and said, we're going to do this, and just asked me to help. And so we were really just putting on this event, and that's fun and great, but it was nothing more than that. And then, and part of that though, we were, okay, and we didn't know what in the world we were doing, and back then, like, nobody sold tickets online. That was all new and difficult back then. And so, I'm trying to think of what year this would have been.
Probably before 2011.
I think it was like 2009 or something. Anyway, so I reached out to, I did not know the Yeti founders at the time, but they have another brother, Rick, and I knew Rick. So I reached out to Ricky and asked him for an intro. And I asked them to, hey, would y'all be interested in sponsoring the event? They said yes. They also gave us like a cooler to raffle off. And so I just took them to lunch to say thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And it was at that lunch, and Ryan and I were talking, and there was all these ideas and questions coming in my head. And I was asking him all this stuff, and he's like, I'm asking him like, well, how are y'all, doing this? How do you do that? And I think so many people he's so used to people asking about the product or like how to use the product in the field or something. And I was asking more like business and marketing questions.
Mm-hmm.
And he really was like, I don't know, man. Yeah, you're kind of bugging me with all this stuff. And so I went home and really went and researched as much as I could.
Mm-hmm.
And back in those days, Yeti had 8 employees and they all shared one Gmail account. and which today is like unfathomable, but they were sharing a warehouse out in Driftwood and right by the Salt Lick, if you've ever been out there. And I just like reached back out to Roy and said, look, I've put together all these ideas and these thoughts and some questions. And some of these I think you really need to hear. Because I, as far as I can tell from searching online and going to so many retailers, I don't think you're doing this. And so I just sat down with him, and I really had no intention other than just sharing this. We still hadn't even put on the event. Mm-hmm. And he, and we had this really good sort of conversation, and he said, well, look, this is all great. I don't really know what most of this stuff is, but if you're so intent on like solving this, why don't you just do it for us? And so he just kind of deputized me and let me do it. And it was really, and frankly, I wasn't really looking for that. And I didn't really know like, oh shit, okay, well, I guess I got to figure this out. But we started there, and then it just snowballed. And, their company was off to the races and growing, but it was like, the work and the stuff that we were doing together, then that started snowballing too. So then he started giving me more stuff. And then, before long, it was like, well, hey, why don't we kind of want all your time. Why don't you just come in house? Mm-hmm. So the first year or I don't know, 9 months or whatever, it was, I was just like an outside consultant or third party, or consultant's kind of a bad word, but just outside help. Yeah. And then it just kind of snowballed into them bringing me on in-house and setting up a marketing team and doing all that. So, and it was a great ride, and we had a lot of fun and got to do a lot of cool stuff while I was there. But that was the first time I'd ever really like even considered overlapping work and hobbies.
Okay.
And I'd always, been fortunate enough to work in places where I could go do that, but never like as getting paid for that.
Yeah.
And having fun while doing it. So that was kind of a cool deal. And for me, it kind of kicked off this other like, oh shit, well, I can go combine these two, or overlap is probably a better word. But anyway, so for me, it was kind of this aha moment of, oh shit, I can go do this and enjoy the subject matter too. Even though we were still doing like real work. Yeah. And you still have all the challenges of building a company and expanding and all that stuff. So, but it was great. And then, along the way, not only doing the Yeti stuff, but you end up meeting all these people from other brands and other things. And I mean, frankly, you got to meet all these people that I had watched on TV for years. And so it was really fun and neat. And it ended up being it was great, both personally and professionally.
Do you have any names that you remember meeting for the first time? Like, oh, like that's someone that I used to watch growing up. This is actually really cool.
Oh yeah. I mean, Saturdays I would set the VCR and tape record, like the ESPN used to have fishing shows all Saturday morning. Which now seems like, oh my God, they would never do that because they got 1,000 college football games or whatever. But, and so I would record them, and then I'd go off fishing or playing or whatever, and then come back and watch them later. And Bill Dance, who's like a legendary, mostly bass fishing. He's a legend. And I remember being at ICAST one year, and he and his manager came up to the booth, and this was before, honestly, Yeti had no presence in bass, because all the tournament bass guys, there's really no place for a cooler on that boat. They have built-in coolers,
Yeah.
With sort of a hatch door, but not like a freestanding Yeti. Nobody had it. And they didn't want it. And so anyways, we were talking, we were trying to figure something out. Maybe there's a way to work together, but it was so fascinating. And then but we're just talking. And what I told him about I had this favorite episode that had actor Jerry Reed on it. And it was really funny. And I probably watched that episode like 20 times. And so I told him all about it. And I said, it's my favorite episode. And I used to have it on VHS. I'd watch it over and over. And he thought that was such a kick that I remembered it, had it. And then so, we go back home after the trade show, and like 2 weeks later, this package shows up at the Yeti office, and there's a DVD of that episode, and there's a letter from Bill Dance, and it's on his Bill Dance stationery, and it's got the his Tennessee baseball cap is like part of the stationary letterhead, and then there he was, he signed it, and it was pretty cool. That was a pretty fun thing. So as like a kid super fan, that was a fun one.
That's actually really, really cool.
Yeah.
Were there any people who kind of helped you throughout the industry while you were figuring it out? Because you mentioned you kind of did get into it sort of on accident, but you did know what you were doing behind the scenes in the administrative side. But was there anybody that kind of helped you through this like first part of your career?
Well, I would say that that's a really good question. I'm trying to think if there was anyone in particular. So I had done a lot of things prior to this. And I think one of the real opportunities, at least that I saw, was that there's all these wonderful people in the outdoors industry, but at that time, the stuff they were doing, like the activities, the marketing activities and things, were not on par with like the rest of consumer. And so, although I'd never really done anything in consumer, but which I was sort of surprised about. And it was almost just like they were running it the way they had been doing it, and so they just kind of kept running the same playbook. And so there was this opportunity, and I think also in conjunction with the fact that Yeti had sort of like, reinvented or redefined a product category. And so at that time it was like, hey, as a company and as a product and as a brand, we're very open to busting down walls or pushing barriers. And so it was like, hey, we can go try all this stuff that no one in the industry is doing. And so that was really great and fun, because it was like, well, hey man, if we can go dream it up and we can go figure out how to make it happen, then yeah, we'll take a chance on that. And so that was neat. And because no one else was doing what we were doing, it was something of a land grab to go get like all the best thought leaders, the best minds, the best, visionaries in the arena on our team, so to go get the best hunters, the best anglers, the best, all that, captains, like that was really, it was like, well, here's this category that they're not even looking at. They all have coolers, but they're not considering it from like a partnership or sponsorship standpoint. And so,
which is as like necessary.
Yeah, it's just the thing we had. And so we got to go sort of assemble the all-star team, if you will. And I wouldn't say that wasn't perfect by any means, but given sort of where Roy and Ryan wanted to take it, like we got to go do some really cool stuff.
So you were traveling to meet all these people, so you were actually able to like meet them face to face and actually go outdoors and do cool stuff. It wasn't just like emails and calls.
Yeah. So a lot of times we'd meet them at a show, trade show, or another event, and then that might be where we kick it off, and then you end up sort of building a rapport with somebody and you really like them and you like what they're doing, and then might figure out a way to work together. And, but yeah, sometimes we were going and fishing with them or hunting with them or whatever it was. And then, but as far as other people, I mean, man, I can't think of anyone. I don't mean that selfishly. I just can't think of anyone that was like, I think honestly, where I found the most sort of opportunity was pulling from the stuff I had already done in other industries and pulling that in. So it wasn't necessarily like a person. It was more like, oh, hey, well, if we go do this, we might be able to get a whole new audience, or, like just a different sort of operating ways. But anyway, so I think that was that's not a great answer for you. But
no, I mean, it's a true answer though. One of the questions I had when you first mentioned the film tour back in the day, you look at what the industry was like back then. I obviously wasn't a part of it at the time, but you were. What are some major differences between what it was like in those days, especially like in the not entertainer side, because I don't think that's what people are. I think it's just, but the content creation side versus now.
Well, social media was just sort of getting rolling. And so that wasn't really as much of a thing. That was kind of starting, but it didn't have near the proliferation that it does today. And it didn't have the, now I think so many people and even businesses are like social first. And so and then they kind of reverse engineer the rest. And that just wasn't the case, at least back then.
Do you think it's a good thing, or?
I don't know. I think there's pros and cons. I mean, I think, one of the pros is it's easier than ever for somebody to get something off the ground. And it's all at your fingertips to go you can go find an audience and connect with them and have a real dialogue with them, and build rapport with other people or brands or whatever it is. So in that way, I think it's great. I think though that because you weren't, or I should say people or the content sort of side of it wasn't so focused on like the constant need and stream of it all, that they probably put more thought and consideration into like what they went and made. Yeah. But you're also like, oh, I just needed one photo to post today. Whereas like, no, we'd go spend months like working on this one video clip or this one trip to then go get the photos. So I think there's pros and cons, and I think you ask any business and they would say, yeah, I mean, we love social for the good reasons, but we also sort of, are disgruntled about how much that it's sort of necessary. It's not really optional. It's sort of it's table stakes these days. You kind of got to do it.
As a businessman, as a company man, I think that was a good answer. But you as a personal person, like as your own introspective views on social media, the reason I bring it up is because I've had a lot of photographers on this podcast before, and it seems like the answer is always the same. It seems like through social media, there's like this hyper saturation in the industry where it's extremely hard to show what you can do because almost anybody can do it with a phone. And I feel like it almost makes some pictures that would have been jaw dropping back in the day almost lackluster now.
Yeah. I think that I do think for really discerning, qualified, good photographers, videographers, artists, whatever. I mean, I think it's too bad that this badass work is maybe limited to this tiny little phone screen. And that's the best resolutions a lot of people are ever going to see it. But at the same time, I think the good stuff is always going to rise to the top. And so now you can have bad stuff rise to the top too. It's not exclusive. Yeah. And you can have good stuff not rise. And I think that that's I think a lot of what social media brings to the dynamic is that it also, done well, requires like hustle.
Yeah.
And so for more introspective people who don't love the hustle side of it, they could be the best artist or the best like creator, but their stuff may not get seen by as many.
Not the best marketer.
But if they're not good at self-promotion and marketing, it sometimes doesn't, make it that far out of the gate.
I hate marketing.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people do. And I get it. But there's a difference between like marketing and like trying to find your audience and tell them the right thing to say and all that, but also self-promotion.
Yes.
And I think that's what really a lot of this comes down to for photographers or videographers or artists or anybody who's like, they go and create and then they have to turn around and publish, but it's not as pure as publishing and push and go. It's like, no. Now you got to go promote and stay on it and do all the shit.
You can't get off the horse.
I just as a little anecdote, there's a really great writer, and he's a fishing guide and a buddy, and his name is Callan Wink. And he guides out of Livingston in the summers and has for a long time. He's originally from Michigan and he's written a bunch of great articles and books. Great dude. And he kind of has this writing life figured out. And so he goes and will guide all summer, and then all winter he'll go off somewhere, California or Costa Rica or whatever. And he just like hangs out, surfs, and writes.
That's cool.
And for a guy like him, it's this awesome fit because he gets to like, kind of do what he wants to do. He's kind of in charge of his little microcosm, and he doesn't have to push, post all the time. And he like doesn't. But I was chatting with him the other day, and he has a new book coming out, which is going to be really great. I'm really excited about it.
You want to plug it?
But it's called Beartooth. It's coming out, and I think in February.
Awesome.
And I'm excited to read it. All his other books are great, but I was chatting with him the other day, and he's like, because he has a little, like book promotional publishing tour, right?
Okay.
So it probably had like 10 dates on there and locations, and like, this event or this bookstore, and he's going to go, do a little author event, which is super cool. And I'm trying to get him to come to Austin.
That'd be cool.
And I was sort of giving him a hard time about, now you're going to be the big, roadshow book author, be on Good Morning America and all that shit. And he was like, man, it's going to be really hard to get me out of Costa Rica to actually make it to these dates, because he's just so happy, which I get. And so, I think that's the part about social I think everybody likes seeing cool stuff. And I mean, shit, man, one of my favorite things about social is you can sort of drill down into these rabbit holes on stuff you're interested in. I love to cook, so I follow all these chefs and people making cool stuff. And like, that's fun as hell. I probably wouldn't dial that up on the TV as much. But like, that part of social is great. But when it comes to you pushing content out and being a self-promoter, that can get hard. On
a personal point, what's your favorite dish to try to cook?
Oh man, I don't know. And I love, I'm a sucker for like a one pot meal.
Like a one pot pasta or
like a stew
stuff.
or something like that. Or, there's a British chef called Thomas Straker. I've been watching a lot lately. He's been doing like, really sort of emblematic English pub foods. Lately. Okay. It's pretty badass. But there's a lot of guys, like I get, there's another guy, Pizza with Perez is
Never
another
heard
one.
That one
He's badass. And he's always throwing these great, incredible pizzas and firing these pizzas. And there's some incredible ones, and even if I don't try it, like, I love just watching that stuff.
Yeah, I love watching that stuff too. I'm a big Joshua Wiseman fan, Babish fan.
Oh yeah, Babish is great.
Yeah,
Danielson Williams.
Yeah.
Daniel Williams, if you follow him.
After this.
Yeah. He's awesome. He's actually a Texas native. And, and one of my favorite things I love about him is he's not a chef. He taught himself how to cook during COVID and has then combined that. And he has like a great sort of demeanor about it, but like he's shooting everything on an iPhone.
Yeah.
And, in his house, it's not like some pro kitchen or something, but he's awesome. He makes awesome looking stuff. And, his dog's walking around in the background, and he always puts on a record before he starts. Like, so he just has his own cool vibe to it.
Heard.
And so I love that too. He's a great one.
While we're on the topic of food, I might as well just give your hot take on Haribo gummies before we get into your days in Howler.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people know that I'm a very devoted and loyal, loving fan of Haribo gummy bears, Gold Bears, and we were laughing about it earlier, but it's something that started just as a kid, and I love them. I don't even eat much candy. I just love these.
Yeah.
And so every time I go fishing, they're in my boat bag or my wading bag. And if you're on the boat with me, you probably had them. But yeah, and now it's sort of like turned into this joke. And so I have friends who, brought me our rep, Dustin Carlson. He went to Germany and brought me a bunch of Haribo from Germany, like flavors and, stuff that we don't have here. And anyways, just some funny stuff.
Was there a difference though between the German ones?
Yeah. And you can find both here. Mm-hmm. So not to get too deep on this, but like Haribo has, so they, presently they have factories in Germany, in Turkey, and also in outside of Barcelona. Mm-hmm. And so, and they are just now opening their first U.S. factory. So once that comes online and we'll start having, Gringo Haribo gummy bears, then we'll have to have a taste test. But yeah, you can actually tell the difference. There's a little difference in flavor, a little difference in consistency, but also in the color. Yeah.
We're not against the color, but yeah. I don't want to spend too much time.
We can do a whole episode on that shit if you want.
Well, so tell me a little bit from the moment you moved to Yeti, how'd you end up at Howler Bros, and then run me through some of that chronological order.
So actually I was at Yeti, and this new company, Howler Brothers, had just launched. I had just seen it like a week prior, and but didn't really know much about it. I just had now been on their website. I may have ordered something, maybe not. I can't remember, but they were doing really cool stuff, and I was really impressed with how they came out of the gate with this what felt like a pretty full offering, not just like a t-shirt and a hat,
Yeah.
And it was really lots of cool details and really considered, and everything they kind of talked about, and I don't know, the way they presented it really just really spoke to me. And so, but then coincidentally, a week or so, 2 weeks later, my friend Aaron introduced me to Chase, founder of Chase Hurd, founder of Howler Brothers. And so Aaron and Chase and I all went to lunch one day, and we just hit it off and sort of became fast friends. And I'm a fan and a customer. And we just started chatting, and Chase and Andy Stepanian, who's the other co-founder, they had been working on this for over a year before it ever came to light, just naturally, it just takes that long. But both super incredibly talented, creative guys, done a lot of cool stuff in their own right, but had never done anything like this, never done anything where you're manufacturing something, and also had never done anything in the outdoor world. And so it was just an easy kind of friendly conversation. But then what happened was Chase and I would start meeting for beers about once a month. Mm-hmm. And, he'd come with a list of questions, and I'd come with maybe a couple ideas, and that was it. And we just started, but that really sort of blossomed into a friendship. And then, long story short, after a while, I decided I wanted to leave Yeti, and we were talking, and he was like, well, man, would you ever want to come work with us? And it took longer than this, and there was a little pit stop in between the two, but yeah, eventually we worked it out, and it was great. And it was like the easiest, most fun, like start of a job ever, at least for me. And now it's been almost 11 years, but, and we actually have a couple new people that started here last week. I think this is week 2 for them. And we had an all hands meeting yesterday, and one of the other, Killian, who's been here for a while, he was sort of jokingly saying that, starting a new job is simultaneously overload, because you're like learning all these new people and new systems and new processes and new shit and the way we do stuff here and all that. So you're trying to write all that down and like absorb all that and get used to that. And it's also very boring because you're new. And so you don't know anything yet. And you don't know enough to really contribute yet, or you're not up to speed on everything. And so it's this sort of hilarious, situation, which was a funny comment. But when I started at Howler, there was only, I think, 5 people, and all super small. And we still had our office was on the front of the warehouse. And so, literally it was like at 3:00 every day, Avery would print out all the orders we'd received online and print out the shipping labels, and then go in the back and pack them and get them ready to go.
Wow.
And so that was like our routine. And it was great. And it's in a lot of ways how companies should start. But it was really easy and fun to join the team and sort of instantly jump into all of that.
Would it be safe to assume that through your time at Howler, you've also been able to travel and experience some of the things that you probably wouldn't have had you not?
Yeah. And I think one of the other things is just the, maybe the quantity and the frequency of getting to do trips like that. So we started, doing destination photo shoots and video shoots which were, they are a lot of work. And from the outside, people think that, it's just like this fun trip, but it really does take a lot of work in advance, the prep, the pre-production, but then also while you're there, y'all might see 5 minutes of video, but that might've been a week and a half of, all this stuff. And so you're seeing the best of it, but those trips are always a blast. And so, we've done a lot of those trips and photo and video shoot. And those are always a blast. And you get to bring into the fold a lot of fun, cool people, which also make the trips a lot of fun. You go into cool destinations and doing fun stuff, which makes it a great time. So I think for us, we've done Mexico a lot of different places in Mexico. Now we've done Costa Rica a few times, Belize, and I don't even go on them all, but you add it up, and we've also done Canada and all over the U.S. and the Bahamas, and so me getting to go on some of those trips has been really fun. Yeah. And, even if you're at a fishing destination, let's say, as part of the crew, I might get to fish 3 hours, one afternoon or something. Right. Yeah. And we actually may not be fishing that much. We got a whole lot of other stuff to do too, other activities, but also like we got to shoot all these clothes on people. And we only need so many shots like of a guy on the front of the boat.
Yeah. Man.
And so you got to mix it up. So all those photo shoots, you probably get to fish a little bit.
Yeah.
But not necessarily like, it's not like 5 days.
Yeah, all the time.
That's all I'm doing. You know what I mean?
What were some of your favorite destinations? Or some that kind of like, you looking back on it, you're like, wow, like that trip in and of itself was something special because of, circumstantial evidence or something. Yeah,
that's a great one. I think they all have their like great, the combination of the place, the people, what you're doing, they all have their own special things. I'm always very partial to Mexico. So I would probably have to pick one of those. We had a great trip years ago where we were going down to Sayulita and taking some of the guys we were taking Cameron Brown and Patrick Duke and my buddy Blue Hopkins, who also used to work at Yeti, first graphic designer Yeti ever had. And then we...
Running out of time?
Yeah, we're coming up against the end of our time here.
Oh, okay. Well, if you want, you can finish this answer, and then we'll run through like the exit questions or something. That's not a problem at all.
Okay. Well, and so, anyways, it ended up being a really great trip, but we had hooked up with a guy named Israel Preciado, who was a local, to kind of be our fixer, kind of help us out on the ground. Well, we ended up like absolutely loving and loving hanging out with Izzy to the point where he became a really close friend and has been a Howler ambassador for years. So it's just fun that you end up meeting, you go into it with this one intention, but we end up meeting these other great people that sort of become part of the extended family.
Okay. Well, so typically, like, I'll end with 2 questions, and I'll let you pick which one you want to answer. I've never done this before, but so the 2 questions that you can either answer to end this, since we're running out of time, is looking back on everything that you've done in your career. Is there anything that you wish you've done differently, or if you had kind of a piece of advice to give, like, the next generation that's coming into this industry, what would it be?
Oh, those are great. Can I do both?
Sure. I mean, I want you to do both. Okay. I thought we were pressed for time.
Yeah. Well, I think they took this out of the room, so I think we might have a few minutes here. I think if there was something I would have done differently, there's always sort of the hindsight is 2020, and you wish you had done stuff differently, or maybe taking advantage of a moment better or something like that. I really don't have anything that was real like a burn on my saddle, because I think even the things that I wish I had done differently, they weren't detrimental, and there ends up being a silver lining out of all those. And so you end up what kind of felt like maybe the wrong path, or one door shuts, but then the other one opens, and you find this next thing. And so I really don't know that I would say there's any one thing I would do differently. I think being open to whatever comes along, though, is really important. And I think to that day, and I just turned 50, but I sort of think and act like I'm 24. And so I don't ever think that, like, I always look at stuff like, oh, this new opportunity, or this new, a new friend or new partnership or whatever it is. So I think there's always room to expand and grow. Man, advice for someone next generation.
Next gen coming into the industry. It doesn't have to be in the sales side. It can be just the industry as a whole.
Yeah, I would, I think, and I'll preface this by saying, probably once a month, or on average once a month, I either meet with or am asked to meet with someone who's maybe graduating from college and trying to figure out their next move, or, transitioning jobs and trying to figure out what they want to do. And a lot of times it's around, they really love the outdoors. They want to get in the outdoor industry, something to that nature. I am in favor and support everyone who wants it to try to do that. I think, though, one thing I would tell everyone is just loving the outdoors is not enough. Everyone in this industry loves the outdoors. So that's almost like, it's not even table stakes. It's just like a minimum requirement to get in the room. Yeah. But I think that really so if you love the outdoors, great. You love to fish or whatever it is, like, awesome. But you have to go find some way to add value to the companies that are operating in this realm.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is not if you want to go be let's say if you want to go be a photographer on your own, that's great. But you still have to go find ways to add value. And a lot of that can be done, even if you don't have experience. A lot of that can be done with hustle. And I think, I've just seen so many people wanting to get in the industry and sort of thinking there's just this, silver platter and, oh yeah, if I work for this company, I'm going to get to go fishing all the time. That's not what happens. Most people who work at these companies are not fishing all the time. They're actually working all the time. I spend way more time, staring at spreadsheets and stuff than my friends who are not in the industry, And so I think where that really gets to is like, hey, I totally applaud you wanting to overlap like I got to do, work with your hobbies and things you're interested in, which is wonderful. Just you got to go find what you're good at and how are you going to contribute to this team and how are you going to add value to this company? And then it becomes the door is open for you. But if you're just a recent college grad who loves the outdoors, that is not enough.
Yeah.
And so I just encourage people to say, okay, well, like, what are you good at? What do you want to do, like functionally, operationally, and how can you go prove yourself or add value or hustle so that they're dying to hire you?
Yeah. Okay. I like that answer. It's pretty solid, specific answer. That's awesome. Well, it's a shame that we have to end so early. But I mean, with that being said, this has been really, really fun. I've wanted to meet you for a while since Hansen dropped your name like about a year ago. And I'm glad that we finally got a chance to do this.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for coming in. Thanks for giving me the opportunity. And I want to thank Hansen too. He's a great dude. If you're in the Miami area, go look him up. He's a great human.
I'll be there like next week.
Dude. And a great fly tire and just a great all around human.
Cool.
So thanks,
right.
Hansen.
Well, let's get out of here.